Okay, so what I wanted to do today is talk about a operations research class that I have taught, several times over the years. I'll discuss, briefly some of the projects, but most importantly, I am teaching this class in less than a month now, and any suggestions will be greatly appreciated. The curriculum is very flexible each year. I will already be incorporated some stuff from the first two talks. Some of the things mentioned there I'm already discussing and looking forward to other people's perspectives on these. So the main goal, when I teach this class is to teach students how to use linear programming and some other techniques, and to emphasize to them that what they need to do when they're going out to industry is they don't have to solve the problems exactly. They just have to do better than is being done. And that is a much lower bar. And students often have this perception, I can't do anything useful for a long time. And I try, no. By the end of this class, in fact, by classes you've already taken up till now, there's a lot of stuff that people around you don't. And there are inefficiencies that are there that you can work on. And so we talk a lot about modeling. We talk a lot about asking the right question and trying to have the right techniques. The more programming my students have, the better. Not everyone in the group needs to have programming skills. It's nice if somebody has that. It's nice if somebody has organizational skills. And so I have had a lot of students who have never been the top student in their class in terms of theory, but they can actually get people working together. And when they're applying for jobs after college, they've had such a confidence boost after doing something like this that they know, hey, I think I can actually do this. And it's nice to see different skills being rewarded, especially the presentation skills, being able to talk to customers and clients and having experiences in those types of interactions. And, since I'm recording this, I will share some of the stories for when it's not being recorded in the break in between as to what kinds of conversations I've had with people over the years. One of the things I like to do is I actually have a board of trustees that keeps tabs on me. They are composed of former students of the classes who have now graduated and gone off into industry, and they can actually advise the students, where is Miller correct, where is Miller off his rocker, and just give them some experience from their past couple of years, as well as, of course, continue contacts between the current students and the previous students. So there's a lot of problems. Some of these have already been discussed earlier today, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. I will mention elimination numbers was talked about, which is a wonderful topic. When does a team still have a chance to win? And I am a Red Sox fan. In 2004, best baseball season of all time. Not only did the Red Sox win, but the Yankees choked. But what was interesting is the Red Sox won the wild card, and they had clinched the wild card one day earlier than a lot of the programs did because they weren't doing the right linear programming problem. It was possible for teams to overtake the Red Sox and win the wild card. But any team that would overtake the Red Sox to win the wild card would have to win the AL West. So there were two teams in competition for winning the AL West, and they forgot that, yes, they could overtake the Red Sox, but the only way they could do that was they would also have to overtake team leading them in the AL West. And so the Sox had actually won one day earlier. It's a great way to really emphasize the importance of looking at the question. Right. So I talk a lot about my experience. So I have been working on applied mathematics, even though I was trained as a pure mathematician for many years. A lot of this is due to my wife, who was a graduate student at Wharton, and through her professor, I got involved in a lot of projects. So I've worked on things for the movie industry, for movies in terms of how to schedule movies, data integrity projects, a lot of sabermetrics, Major League Baseball, consulting with financial firms, and it's wonderful to get in stuff like this. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the details and some of the ways that this is done. So I try to emphasize to my students that there are always opportunities to take advantage of inefficiencies that are out there. So there are two places that you really need to know in my town. It's a very small town, the ice cream place and the pool place. And the pool place is now closed, so it's really easy. It's the ice cream place that everybody goes to. So they have the cool drinks right where the sun beats down on it. And so it's really not a big deal. Hey, why don't you move this to a place that you have all this wonderful shaded areas? The other one is, this is from one of the local baseball fields near us, the Pittsfield Suns, where the netting does not go all the way up to the top. And I was unfortunately right behind this with my son, telling him we're in the safest part of the stadium. We're right behind home plate. Nothing can hit us. Now, if we were talking about physics a moment ago, nothing could hit us. Unfortunately, a ball could go behind us around 10 rows. And right after I said that, hit somebody in the eye 10 rows right behind us. And just really emphasizing to my students, there's lots of things you can do without too much work. Some of the more interesting examples I like to talk about is World War II ended with some interesting treaties between the Soviet Union and the other allies. And so when it was the closure of the roads into West Berlin, the Allies were still allowed to airlift supplies. And so the effort to keep West Berlin stocked was a wonderful problem in your research allocation. How did the Allies manage to get all the materials they needed in so quickly? I'll just mention one of the other ones. When I took my kids to Disney and I debated, but decided, no, even I can't expense this one. One of the things Disney did to keep track of how fast the lines were moving in a very quick way is they just gave every number of people after a certain amount of time a red card. And they just collected the red card and you got to the end of the line and you got, go on the right. So they could get constant updates of how long is the line taking to move so that their estimates, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes would be very accurate. I'm just trying to emphasize to my students, you don't have to use the most high-powered mathematics often to make a real impact. Small, easily implementable solutions are absolutely wonderful. Okay, so a bunch of projects my students have done. We've done some work for the medical industry, and this is particularly fun as well as also a challenge because you have to make sure that all the data is kept confidential and you're talking to the students and making sure they understand how careful you have to be, what kind of safeguards you have to take. A lot of interesting stuff with baseball lawsuits, a lot of scheduling. This is a great example of trying to use things for linear programming, localization. I have students working with me for a local company that makes micro homes. And the problem is, in an ideal world, they would be able to order wood in the sizes that they want. They can't do that. With the supply chain right now, if they get wood in any size, they're happy. And so given woods coming in at various sizes, how do you make the cuts to minimize the amount of leftover material you have? What kind of storing do you have on site? So your woodings are you more willing in reserve? And so it's a wonderful real-time question. My students have written code that has already been implemented by the company and has reduced waste tremendously. And so it's just absolutely wonderful to have things like this that students can work on. I have to be extremely careful about this because I am an elected official in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I serve on a regional school committee. And so I will talk about a wonderful problem that I actually had my students working on with me. So we used to have 3 districts. There was the high school for the towns of Williamstown and Lanesboro, and each town had their own elementary school. So we had 3 school districts. We actually had 4 school committees to give you an idea of just how bad the administration was. More committees than. And we were going to regionalize. And when we regionalize, what is how much Chapter 70 funds go to each school, we were just told how much goes to district. But we need to know how much went to each school to allocate the taxes appropriately in the towns. And the state would not give us that information. Well, you can sniff this out using regression, using simple calculations like this. And so the question was, can we try to figure out what the formula is, allocate the money equitably? And so this was an opportunity to talk to students about real world problems. We need a formula that does a good job. It needs to be transparent, and it needs to be able to be explained to the voters, to the Board of Selectmen, to the finance committees. And so my students got to see these different conversations. They could come to some of the meetings and they could discuss with me, will the model do what we want? All right, so we did a method of least squares, a linear regression. We basically simplified it to just using the populations and the property values of the towns. And we talked about, well, what kind of properties do we want the solution to have? Well, we want it to exist. We want values hopefully between 0 and 1. We want values to be stable into small changes. And we want the sum of the percentages to be 1, in terms of allocating the funds. Some of these are not as important as others. If the sum of the percentages doesn't add up to 1, well, we can always just rescale. That's not a big deal. But there were some really interesting things that arose when we tried to actually come up with the solutions. And I will save that for when the recording fails. But it was just an absolutely wonderful opportunity for the students to see what are the challenges when you try to take things from the theoretical side and actually implement them. This one I will say, I'll pose this as a question and I'll stop. If Williamstown and Lanesboro are going to save $120,000, how much of that $120,000 should go to Williamstown? For record, Williamstown, let's say, has twice the property assessment and twice the population. So how much of the 120,000 would you give them? Or at least if you don't know, what range would you give me for the 120,000 going to Williamstown? We're mathematicians, you can give me a trivial range. It's before 10 a.m. Trivial range from $120,000. How much you go to Williamstown? Between what numbers? 0 and 120, yes. So Williamstown would get negative $360,000 according to the state formulas. And so this was a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to the students. So we save $120,000 as a district, and Williamstown is paying $360,000 more. Yeah, we can do better than that formula. So anyways, I look forward to comments, so thank you.